Perhaps more than anywhere else, camping at Grand Teton National Park and the surrounding Jackson Hole Valley is extremely popular and competitive. Why is that? Because lodging in Jackson is extremely expensive. Don't let that Old West theme fool you. Jackson is a rich person's playground. But that doesn't mean that you and I can't enjoy it. So in this video, I'm going to cover things that you need to know if you're thinking about camping in Grand Teton or Jackson Hole. So the first thing is to get an overview and understand what is available. So Grand Teton National Park sits within the Jackson Hole Valley. The Teton Mountains are part of the national park, and then they come down into a flat valley, which is called Jackson Hole. Hole was a term that the mountain men used to mean valley. So it encompasses most of the Jackson Hole Valley. It is surrounded by two forests on each side, and actually on the south side as well. And on the north side is Yellowstone National Park. So there is camping both within the park and all around the park in the mountains that surround it. To the south of the park is Jackson, Wyoming, and then about 15 minutes away, also right on the south border of the park, is Teton Village. So let's first cover the campgrounds that are available within the national park. There are 7 campgrounds available. One of these is Coulter Bay, which is actually divided into 2 campgrounds. There's a campground and then there's an RV park. So they technically treat that as 2 different campgrounds, but they're one location. The 2 largest campgrounds are Coulter Bay and Grovant. Grovant looks like Gross Venture, but it's pronounced Grovant. These are at different ends of the park. Grovant is on the south and Coulter Bay is up at the north. The funny thing is, you can see the Grand Teton mountain range from anywhere in that beautiful Jackson Hole Valley, but you actually don't get a good view of it from Coulter Bay or from Grovant. At Coulter Bay, you're surrounded by trees, although you can walk through the trees to get to Jackson Lake, and from there you can see the mountains. At Grovant, your view of the Tetons is blocked by Blacktail Butte, but it is just a short drive around the butte, and then you can see the mountains from there. We've camped at both of these places, and we love both of them. There are also 2 RV parks in the park. One is at Coulter Bay RV, which I mentioned. The other is at Headwaters, which is just north of the park. So I mentioned that Yellowstone sits just north of Grand Teton. The funny thing is there's a little slice of land in between the two called the John D. Rockefeller Memorial Parkway. This is named after John D. Rockefeller because he was really instrumental in getting most of that Jackson Hole Valley to be included with the Teton Mountain Range as Grand Teton National Park. It was actually a 50-year battle. I cover that in my audio guide for the park, but really interesting story. But they named that little piece of land that connects the 2 parks John D. Rockefeller Memorial Parkway. Although Headwaters and Flag Ranch, which is there, are both administered by Grand Teton National Park. That area, by the way, is really gorgeous, really popular both in the summer and in the winter. In the winter, you can do a lot of snowmobiling there. In the summer, a lot of fly fishing and horseback riding. And then one other thing is Jenny Lake is a tent-only campground. It's a small little campground that's right next to Jenny Lake, which is kind of the crown jewel of Grand Teton National Park. It is only for tents. How to get a campground? Well, luckily, all the campgrounds are available on recreation.gov. They're actually administered by different concessionaires, but fortunately they've put them all on one website for us to reserve, which is recreation.gov. These sites used to be first come, first serve, but camping has gotten so popular there in Jackson Hole that they moved them all over to reservation only. So you can no longer get a first come, first serve site within the national park. You must reserve it on recreation.gov. The campgrounds open up for reservations 6 months in advance, and that is 6 months to the day. Now, the nice thing about recreation.gov is it's easily filtered. You can find the campsite you're looking for. You can find certain amenities that you're looking for very easily. Also, if you're booking kind of late in the game, just keep checking back on there because there are cancellations that happen fairly often. Most campgrounds cost about $40 per night, except for the RV park campgrounds, which have more amenities. Those are about $80 per night. If you have a senior pass or an access pass, these are America the Beautiful passes for people who are over 62 and people who are disabled. If you have one of those passes, you'll get a discount on almost every campground. So what are the campsites like? Well, normally National Park Service campgrounds are a little smaller and more scrunched in there. Forest Service campgrounds outside of the parks are typically a little more spacious and a little nicer depending on where you go. The Forest Service tends to be a little more recreation friendly for people than the national parks are, because the national parks have a mission to try to preserve their holding as much as possible. So their campsites are typically smaller. However, in Grand Teton, I have noticed that they're quite nice. They're actually a little more spacious, I think, than most national park campgrounds. We love it there and have no complaints about the size of the campgrounds. If you have an RV, the maximum RV lengths are either 30 feet or 45 feet, depending on which campground you go for. Almost all the RV sites in the park are pull-through sites, which means you're just really kind of pulling off to the side of the road and parking there. There are a few back-in sites, but even those are still a 30 to 45 foot length. And when they say that, what they're talking about is the combined length of your vehicle. So if you have a truck and a trailer, you're looking from the front of the truck to the back of the trailer. That is your length. It has to be 30 or 45 feet, depending on the campground you choose. You cannot back into a site and then park next to it with your truck. That's not going to work at Grand Teton. So be aware of the RV lengths. Almost all the campgrounds allow generators, but the quiet hours are 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And again, Jenny Lake doesn't allow generators because they don't allow RVs. As far as amenities, some campgrounds have sewer, some have electric, some have dump stations, some have camp stores. It really just depends on the campground that you choose. In fact, I went through every campground and through every amenity that they offer because I was kind of confused by this. And so I actually put together a chart. So if you're somebody who's looking for a particular campsite, like an ADA compliant site or one with sewer or a group site or something like that, check out the link in the description because I have created a chart that breaks it all down for you. Finally, you might have wildlife visit you at some of these campgrounds. It's quite common for wildlife to wander through the campgrounds in the park. This last year we were at Coulter Bay and had a couple of deer come right by us. It was really enjoyable. At Grovant, for example, it's very common for moose to hang out in that area. We've also seen fox come through the campground, and while it's possible that bears could come through your campground, it's not very likely. Bears like to avoid people, but they do live in the surrounding area. So that's why they have bear boxes there. If you're visiting Grand Teton soon, I would encourage you to watch our trip planner video. We have a longer video where we talk about all the things you need to know if you're going to visit Grand Teton. It gives you a great overview and introduction to the park in really simple terms. So I'll put that up here on a card somewhere above me, and then I'll put it in the description as well. We also have a Grand Teton playlist that you can check out with a bunch of things to know before you go. Okay, so let's cover some general things you need to know about camping inside the park. As I mentioned, the lengths are 30 to 45 feet for RVs typically. And as I mentioned, seniors and those who have an access pass get a discount on almost all the campgrounds. I've also included that in my chart as well. Generally, cell service is better the closer you are to the city of Jackson, which, as I mentioned, is at the south end of Jackson Hole Valley. Now, I made some phone calls as I was preparing this video, so I had some really good information for you. And somebody at Signal Mountain told me that they recently installed an AT&T tower near there. So she was getting great cell service even up north by Jackson Lake. And in fact, that tower just got installed in November, but my experience was prior to that you need to be closer to Jackson to get cell service. I mentioned the bears and the bear boxes. So every campground, just about every campsite, has bear boxes for you to put your food and water in. If you can't put it in there, you must store it in your vehicle. You cannot store it in your tent, and you cannot leave water out either. You will get a ticket if you do that. They don't want bears coming into the campground to find food that they can munch on or people that they can munch on. If you have pets, they must be on a leash at all times in the campground. Something about Grand Teton and Yellowstone is it's bear country, so these parks are not pet friendly. Although you can have them in your campgrounds on a leash, you really can take them to very few places in the park. Like, you can't take them on trails, hardly any trails. So I would recommend you leave your pet at home or find a pet kennel in Jackson to store your pet. Fires are allowed, but only if you have a metal ring, and drones and fireworks are not allowed at all in the park. Okay, I'm going to move to what's available outside of the national park now, but stay tuned for my recommendations for where to stay in the park at the end of this video. So what's available outside of the park? Well, there are Forest Service campgrounds and there are private campgrounds. So let me cover each of these for you. As I mentioned, the park is surrounded by Forest Service land. So they have hundreds of campsites all around the Jackson Hole Valley and in the mountains surrounding it. These are almost all first come, first served campgrounds. The only exception here is if you have a group site. If you're reserving a group site, you can reserve those on recreation.gov. The rest, however, are first come, first serve only. Some of these campgrounds are established campgrounds that will charge you $15 a night and they'll have water and pit toilets. Some of these are called dispersed camping, which is often referred to as boondocking. This just means there's virtually no services, there's no water, no toilets, the campground is free. Some of these are very difficult to get to on unmaintained roads. For that reason, they often recommend that you scout ahead, meaning you park your trailer and then you drive down the road to find out what the campground's like to see if you're going to be able to pull your trailer on that road and to make sure you don't get caught in a real tight spot where you can't turn around. Some of these are literally just parking lots that they created for overflow campers. Okay, so how do you find these sites? Well, they're all located on campendium.com, and trust me, there are no secrets here. People know about these sites and they fill up these sites regularly. So even these parking lot style dispersed campgrounds, from my understanding, have been jam-packed with RVs right next to each other. So my recommendation is not to go to Grand Teton or Jackson Hole on a whim if you're just hoping to get one of these first come, first served campgrounds. Now, I was kind of lucky last year. I camped at Coulter Bay, and then I had a third night where I couldn't get a reserved campground, so I thought, well, I'll drive around and see if I can find a campsite, and if not, then I'll just drive home. And I tried a couple of campsites that were full, and I tried one last one and got a little lucky, found a campsite, but it's kind of a rough way to go. They really do fill up and they stay full. Okay, next let's talk about the private campgrounds in the area. So there are 4, 5, 6 campgrounds that I've found in the area. Some of these are RV parks, some of them are glamping places. So you do have some options here. The general consensus here from the reviews that I read from people online are that these places are really tightly packed in there and they're quite expensive. So when I say expensive, I mean they could be around $80 to $100 a night for just a super basic bare bones little RV pad. However, the benefit is you get a reservation and you know you're gonna have it when you get there. Okay, time for my suggestions. First of all, I suggest staying in the park rather than outside of the park simply for the reservation thing, but you're also closer to the action, so it's a lot nicer. If you're traveling with a family and you want that resort style vacation, then go for Coulter Bay or Signal Mountain. These are located right on Jackson Lake, and you can just walk down to the lake and swim or kayak or paddleboard. They offer guided fishing and rafting trips. There's really a lot of fun there at those two places. If you have a big RV, go for Grovant, Coulter Bay RV Park, or Headquarters because they offer those 45-foot long RV pads. If you want a camping cabin, go for Coulter Bay or Headwaters. They offer camping cabins that you can stay in where you don't have to bring your RV or your tent. Signal Mountain also offers some cabins. They're not really considered camping cabins, but they have some cool little old cabins that were built in the 1930s and some family style cabins as well. If it's seclusion that you're after, go for Lizard Creek. This is one of the smaller campsites and they have very few amenities. The only thing is it'll probably book up fast, but Lizard Creek is a little more removed and a little more quiet. Also, Jenny Lake could be a little more quiet because they don't allow the RVs there. Finally, if you want to be closer to the town of Jackson, then stay at Grovant Campground. Grovant's a pretty nice centrally located campground because it gives you access to Jackson in the south, and then you can still get up to Coulter Bay and to Jackson Lake in the north. We've stayed at Grovant and Coulter Bay, and we loved them both. If I had to choose, I'd probably choose Grovant for the wildlife and the ease of access. Finally, make sure to check out that Grand Teton trip planner video that I mentioned. It'll help walk you through your vacation and make it a lot easier for you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great vacation at Grand Teton, and until next time, go west, young traveler.